our special speaker from Highlands Ranch Water. Sam, right?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Sam Calkins. I'm the general manager for the Highlands Ranch Water and Sanitation District, otherwise known as Highlands Ranch Water. And as you may remember, if your memory goes back past this year, it was the Centennial Water and Sanitation District for our first 43 years. So it was a big change for us. We decided to change the name because we were tired of getting calls from people who said, "Hey, I'm in Centennial and I need you to fix my water." And we had to tell them, well, sorry, we know our name is Centennial, but we don't serve the city of Centennial. We serve Highlands Ranch. We figured it would be pretty easy to clear things up by changing our name, so we did that. But we really think that the name change reflects who we are and who we serve, and we're proud to serve the community of Highlands Ranch since 1981. And so all the things we're going to tell you about tonight really are sort of some of the things we've accomplished over the past 44 years, but more importantly, what we hope to accomplish over the next 44 years and beyond that. So we're proud to have 105,000 citizens of Highlands Ranch that depend on us day in and day out for clean water and for wastewater services as well. We have a 5-member board, and one of our board members, S.J. Light, is going to follow me. I'm just going to give a brief introduction, and she's really the marquee speaker for the event tonight. But of course, we'll be happy to answer questions along the way or at the end of the presentations, wherever they come up. So this is just a quick description of who we are and who we serve. So of course, the community of Highlands Ranch, there's a few other funny shapes and colors up there, but there's a couple pockets that are called Northern Douglas County that we serve water to. Something happened back in the 80s that they didn't want to be part of Highlands Ranch, but they wanted water service, so we worked out a deal with them, and we serve about 10,000 people of our total population in those orange areas. And then off to the west there, above where it says Titan Road, is the relatively new community of Solstice, which was an original part of the Highlands Ranch planned development, but didn't start being developed until about 3 or 4 years ago. And I think there's eventually going to be about 1,200 homes, so maybe 3,500 people out there or so. And they're up to somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 or 700 homes that they've constructed already. Some people confuse that with Sterling Ranch, which is further south of this off the map, and that's a completely different development, much bigger development as it turns out. We're governed by a board of directors, and SJ will tell you more about that, but we have elections every 2 years. We just had one this year. We re-elected one board member and then had one new board member come on board. And the next election, they're every 2 years. I think it's the first Tuesday in May, so I think it's going to be May 6th of 2027 we have our next election. We have a mission and vision that we're proud of, so you can read these, I won't read them to you, but a couple things are important. We want to provide safe, sustainable, and reliable water and wastewater services, and those things are critical to us. We want to make sure that every time you turn on your tap, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that you can trust that you'll have enough water coming out of the tap and that water is high enough quality that you don't ever have to worry about drinking it straight from the tap every day. And we want to provide superior quality and value. We don't say the lowest price, but we say that we want to have superior quality and value, a mix of those two things, so that we make sure that we're giving you the service that you provide. With our vision, I think the most important thing to point out there is the word innovative, and we want to find innovative ways to provide you the services that we provide. So we're constantly trying to do better. We're currently involved in a couple of renovation projects that I'd be happy to talk about if people have questions, but we just wrapped one up at our wastewater treatment plant that allowed us to meet much more stringent environmental regulations that came into play over the past few years. And then our water treatment plant, we're doing 2 things. One is meeting some new regulations. You might have heard about PFAS. That's per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, sometimes known as forever chemicals. But we can treat for those now. We're just going to do some upgrades to make sure that we're rock solid on treating for those. There is PFAS in our water, but we get the vast majority of it out before it goes out to our community, and it is well below EPA limits that won't go into effect until 2031. We also are striving for innovation at our water plant, where we're in the middle of what's going to be probably an 8-year project in 3 phases. The focus of that project, aside from PFAS, is to make sure that we can meet our communities with surface water, which is renewable, versus groundwater, which is non-renewable. So you might have seen the trivia questions that were flashing up before, but 85 or even 87% of our water that we serve to our customers day in and day out is from surface water, which comes from the South Platte River and is renewed every year when it snows up in the Rocky Mountains. We do have the ability to use groundwater, but we try to minimize that because, again, it's a finite resource. And we'll see if this pops up. There it is. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, it's not on this slide, but we have over 100 employees. It's actually, I think, 105 individual people, but we share some of those with the Highlands Ranch Metro District, and so we only get to claim, Highlands Ranch Water only gets to claim half of those people. So officially on our payrolls, we have something like 98 employees, but it's really more like 105. We have people on call, up to 5 people day in, day out. Any hour of the day, if you call us and have a problem with your water system, we can get back to you within minutes on the phone, and then within a half hour to your house to solve any problems that you have. So we're proud of the people that we have, but we also have a lot of impressive infrastructure. It starts, I don't know if this is organized quite the way I'm going to describe it, but with the raw water surface reservoirs, where we can store up to 1 year's worth of water for our community in 3 different reservoirs: Chatfield Reservoir, South Platte Reservoir, and McClellan Reservoir. From the raw water reservoirs, it moves to the Joseph E. Blake water treatment plant, where we can treat up to about 30 million gallons a day. In the summer, especially a hot, dry summer like this one, we're squeezing every drop we can out of that plant because people are watering their grass. And about 75% of the water that we produce in the summer does go to grass turf irrigation. So in the winter, that number is 0 because nobody's watering their grass. So over the course of the year, about half of the water that we produce goes into irrigation. From the water treatment plant, it moves through pump stations and into just where the 8 water distribution tanks, and then through 450 miles of the pipe to get to your homes. And then, of course, you send that water right back to us after you use it. When you flush your toilets, take a shower, do your dishes, wash your clothes, that water makes its way back through 325 miles of sewer pipeline, 6 wastewater lift stations, and then back to the Marcy Gulch wastewater treatment plant. And so, as I mentioned, we can produce up to 30 million gallons a day in the summertime of water. We don't get nearly that much back because, again, most of it's going on the grass and it doesn't make its way into the sewer system. So we treat about 7 million gallons a day of wastewater and then put it back into the South Platte River. So we take it from the South Platte and eventually it makes its way back there as part of the water cycle. So I talked a little bit about water, the PFAS issues that we're trying to solve, and then also the quantity issues, trying to get enough water through our surface water treatment plants so we don't have to use the wells. But a lot of people wonder about why we treat wastewater, and it all comes down to the Clean Water Act of 1972. You may have seen pictures years and years ago of the Cuyahoga River in Ohio on fire because it was so polluted. And because of that and similar instances, Congress put the Clean Water Act into effect. And ever since that was established, wastewater treatment plants like ours have to meet pretty stringent regulations, and they keep getting more stringent over time. To, of course, treat all the waste that's in the water, but also to treat what we call nutrients, which is nitrogen and phosphorus, that is a natural part of wastewater, but it's not natural to the South Platte River, for example. So if we dump a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus, that's fertilizer. It leads to algae blooms, which consume all the oxygen in the water. You get eutrophication, the wildlife can't survive, and all those bad things. And so we treat wastewater to make sure that none of that happens. And it protects water users downstream because Colorado is a relatively dry state with a pretty big population and lots of people depend on that water. So there are municipalities as close as Englewood that draw water from the South Platte River after we dump our wastewater effluent into it. And then, of course, it makes its way down to the farms in eastern Colorado. Other municipalities use that water. So we have to make sure that that water is clean enough for people to swim in, and clean enough not to drink when we put it back into the river, but clean enough that it can be treated at a water treatment facility and repurposed into drinking water again. So that's just a little bit about what Highlands Ranch Water does. If you want to know more, of course, I encourage you to ask questions tonight. Our website, highlandsranchwater.org, has lots of great information on it. We spend a lot of time making sure that it's accessible, that it's easy to understand, and that there is useful information on it. So anything from what's in my water, what kind of chemicals are in the water that I should be concerned about. The answer is we're meeting all the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements, so there shouldn't be anything in the water that's going to hurt you, but you can find out a lot about the things that we remove from the water. If you want to replace the grass in your front yard and you're thinking about a Colorado scape garden or low water plants instead of grass, we have designs for gardens that can kind of fit any type of yard that you might have in the Highlands Ranch front yard, backyard. And so lots of stuff in between. If you ever need help, our phone numbers, both for emergency and for billing and things like that, are on our website. We're on all kinds of social media. You're always welcome to come to a board meeting. Those are always open to the public. We never get anybody there, but if anybody is interested in coming, you're more than welcome. The board meetings are always the last Monday of the month at 6 p.m. And the week before that, at Tuesday at 7:30 a.m., we have a study session. So we kind of go over the business, answer questions that the board might have, and then at the board meeting actually go through the motion of approving things that we're asking our board to approve. So with that, I'm honored to turn this over to our board member, S.J. Light, unless David wants to do an introduction first. Oh, he's moving the slides, okay. So I'll say that S.J. was one of the first 3 members of the community that were elected as board members. So you may have heard of the name Shea Properties, and they were the developers of Highlands Ranch for its first 40 years. But they finished, for all intents and purposes, all the development that they were going to do. And they stepped aside, and we had our first elections in 2023, was it, S.J.? 2022, that's right. And S.J. was elected in 2022. That's been a great board member. Oh, she was elected in 2023, that's right. Okay, so thank you all. Look forward to answering questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Well, our speaker tonight has a resume a mile long, so I'll try to make it shorter than that. Okay. 30 years as a senior business executive in 4 industries worldwide. Previous board chair of 2 large nonprofit organizations, board of the Centennial Water Sanitation District, which is now the Highlands Ranch Water, focusing on saving water and preserving water quality. Created and led a 300-member Sierra Club legislative team to protect our great outdoors. Championed the passage of 3 bipartisan bills in the Colorado legislature to protect our water and preserve our state parks. Helped pass one of the first bills in the United States to limit PFASs, a group of forever chemicals that are linked to serious medical issues, in firefighting foam that was contaminating the drinking water in the Colorado Springs area. Okay, SJ reduced Highlands Ranch Windcrest community water usage by 42%, saved 15 million gallons and $57,000 in water fees annually. This is the annual water usage of 150 Highlands Ranch homes. I'm proud to say that SJ is one of my Windcrest neighbors. Thank you.
Wasn't it supposed to start at 7:30? 7.
Woo, that's a hard act to follow. And she's attributing all of that stuff to me. Whoops. And I have to tell you, I'm getting over one of those nasty
summer colds. So the coughing's gone, the sneezing's gone, but I relied on my Highlands Ranch Water to periodically help my scratchy throat. So today we're going to look at basically 3 topics. I'm going to present you with what I think is some very interesting, not necessarily positive or negative, but interesting water news. Then we're going to focus primarily on Highlands Ranch Water District with 2 different aspects. Some more details of some of the things that Sam shared with you, but then we're going to switch on to the board because a lot of people don't know who's on the board, why they're on the board, what the board does, but hopefully it'll get you so excited that you want to come to the board meeting on August 25th. So we'll go through those, and then we'll be time for Q&A. And when we're all done, we have a table in the back, and both Carrie and Sam and myself will be back there for more questions if you have more. Okay, so let's see, a show of hands. How many of us think that the Colorado water crisis is over? Smart people, smart people. So let me share with you what one of our recent experts has said. Dr. Rosemary Carroll of the Rocky Mountain Research Laboratory just released a paper that kind of this was the highlights. The Western U.S. is plagued with a historic drought. Less snowfall, that is less snow melt, less snowfall in the mountains is drying up the river's main water tap. And climate change is making future precipitation trends uncertain. So that means we've got less water coming to us, and because of the climate change, it's making it harder and harder to even anticipate what the water will be in the future. So that sounds a little scary to me. So how does this Colorado water crisis impact each of us? You may remember seeing this photo of 2022 of Lake Powell at its lowest level. So the pink is what was always above the water. See that big white band? That's where the water used to be. The dark, which looks black in this slide, is where the water is now. But that was in 2022. This year so far, Lake Powell is only 38% full. Lake Mead is only 34% full. So yes, I think we proved our point that Colorado has a water crisis. But what does that mean to each one of us? Okay, if it is not advanced. Yeah, that. Okay. Okay, what does it mean to all of us? Well, it threatens our water supply. So for you and me, it's our bath, it's our shower, it's our lawn, but for the farmers and ranchers, it's their livelihood. They've got generational farms. If they can't feed their animals, if they can't feed us, if they can't water their crops, it's very negative. How many of you have friends or family whose homes have either been burned or threatened by a wildfire? How was that for them? Pretty tough, right? Especially those who lost everything. So with no water, what is happening is we're burning down our homes, we're burning down our forests, and when we burn down our forests, guess what? We destroy our wildlife. So when I look at all 3 of those, water, fires, dead animals, I ask myself, what is that doing to the Colorado way of life? And I think that is something that's pretty critical to all of us. Some of us were born here, treasuring the Colorado way of life. Others have moved here. It's something that we care about. So what I'd like to do now is share with you what I think is some interesting information. Did you know that in 2024, 48 of the 50 states had a drought condition? Most of us hear about the western states, right? Because we're in the western states, but 48 states, and I think we all would have guessed Alaska if we said, okay, Kentucky. So I don't know why Kentucky. Nobody's ever been able to explain to me Kentucky, but those were the only two states that did not experience a drought. Most of us have heard about the 7-state Colorado River Compact. This is a compact that allocates the Colorado River to 7 different states. So we're going to have a name that state contest. Somebody give me one state. Arizona, great. And you're going by alphabet, that's great. Another state. California, great. Another state. Nevada, woo! Let's go. New Mexico. Utah. Colorado, thank you. I was waiting for that. Wow. Okay, one more. Starts with a W. Wyoming. Okay. So we've had 7 states sitting around the negotiation table for what probably feels like their entire lives. And they have made no progress on redefining the Colorado River Compact. The Bureau of Reclamation, which is the federal agency that oversees water and multi-state water, among other things that they do, they met with the negotiators and gave them a deadline of last year to come up with a single revised Colorado compact that all 7 states agreed to. Did they do it? No. So now we're 2025. Have they made any progress in 2025? No. So the challenge is the Bureau of Reclamation has got a deadline of January of 2027. And what their deadline says they have to deliver is a revised Colorado River Compact that has been vetted through public review, that has been amended based on that public review, and it's ready to implement by January 2027. That is going to be a huge challenge, and people are speculating as to what the Bureau of Reclamation is going to do. If they're like Solomon, they're going to divide up the water. And the thought is that all 7 states will lose some of their current water. What they'll actually do, who knows, but that's where people are kind of placing their bet. So that means we're going to lose somewhere along that line. We don't know how much, but it's really been quite a challenge. This one is one that completely caught me off guard. Did you know that the state of Nebraska has declared the right of eminent domain for Sedgwick County, Colorado? No, Nebraska, the state, is calling for eminent domain in Colorado. Okay, this doesn't happen. This is a precedent. And when I first read it, I thought, wow, I wonder who's paying the lawyers for Nebraska, because this will never work. Well, guess what? The lawyers for Nebraska were pretty smart. They found some historical documents that said way back when that we granted to resolve the water dispute. We granted Nebraska the future right to build a canal out of the South Platte River to go to Nebraska, even though it was on Colorado land. So Nebraska is now stepping forward and saying, hello, we want to start work on this. The people in Sedgwick County are going, oh my God. So our Attorney General has come forward and has said this is unprecedented. I'm going to do everything in my power to protect the homeowners of Sedgwick County and to block this. But I believe it will ultimately go to the Supreme Court of the United States. So it's not going to be resolved in a couple of weeks. I don't know how it will end up, but it's something that really caught me off guard. And what it sent me was a huge signal as to what is the fight going to be like in the future for water. If a state like Nebraska can do something as out of the box, something that we would never conceive of, which is declaring eminent domain for land in Colorado. I don't know what other states are going to do, but we need to be prepared that it's going to be a challenging time. So let's look at closer to home. How many of you knew that 80% of our water is used by agriculture? Okay. And is agriculture important to the state of Colorado? Yes. So let's see what agriculture has been doing to reduce their use of water. Approximately 4 years ago, I was part of the team in the Colorado legislature that passed a bill that funded a study led by CSU in 5 of our different geographic areas of Colorado, and where they would go in and they would work directly with the farmers to identify new crops that use less water, new ways of protecting the soil, new ways of using less water. So here's just a quick update on a few things that they've done. They have a grain, it's a perennial grain called kernza. We may want to learn a new name out here. And the good news is it uses half of the water that alfalfa does. And alfalfa is a very important crop in Colorado. So if we can determine that there's a good enough market that farmers can say, okay, I'm going to be able to keep my farm, I'm going to be able to support my family, I'm going to switch to kernza, that means they'll be able to reduce their water use by a half. The other thing they found is that there were some things that the farmers were doing that was really disrupting their soil. When you put these great big mammoth 2-story tractors, reapers, and all of that huge equipment continually on the soil, what it does is it compacts it. And when it's compacted and it doesn't get rain, it's really hard for the crops to grow. So they get less per acre. That's a problem. The other thing that happens is they were tilling the soil for every time they wanted a new crop. And as you till dry soil, it blows the good stuff of the soil blows off in the air. So they were really having soil problems. So there's something called no-till farming that they're working on with a number of farmers, and they hope that many will adopt it, and so that will help with soil preservation. And I don't know about you, but I remember driving down country roads and seeing these things in the field that were water pipes, and then these huge wheels, and they would roll through the field with these twitches of water. It was almost some kind of water aerobatic dance. Well, now what they're doing, they have got water sensors that farmers can place in certain locations that will tell, okay, I need a little nap, that will tell the irrigation system, this area over here is just fine. It may look like it's dry, but I'm down here in the ground and I'm telling you it's just fine. And I may tell the irrigation system that this sensor that's over here is telling you, wow, that looks dry, it is really, really dry, so give it water now. So it's more precise. The other thing is, depending on the irrigation system, you can lose 10 to 12% through evaporation. So by getting that water precisely where it needs to be, when it needs to be, and lower to the ground is a big improvement. The other thing that farmers have done is they have found their political power. How many of you saw, I don't know how many times this was in the Colorado Sun or the Denver Post, farmers down in Colorado Springs walking around with their placards, save our water, save our crops, save my farm. There was a 1,800 acre potential development for residential and commercial usage outside of Colorado Springs, and the farmers said there's not enough water down here to do that, I shouldn't have to share because I was here first and I'm doing a lot of things I can to try to minimize my use of water. So they managed to get the political power by talking to the residents of Colorado Springs and took this into a political ballot initiative. And that ballot initiative vote came out 45, 60 days ago, and it has blocked the development of 1,800 acres in Colorado Springs. Now, when I talk to development people, they tell me there is no such thing as a dead development. They always seem to find an interesting and curious and circular and whatever way of making these come back alive. But for right now, this is a win for the farmers. So I'm kind of standing up for the farmers today. I'm telling you, they're working on getting their crops right, protecting their soil, using less water, and they're using their political power. So now let's take a look at some improvements that have already taken place or are taking place right now. Have any of you heard either of these terms, Colorado water-wise landscaping or Colorado scaping? Remember when xeriscaping was hot? Well, it sounded like it was going to be hot. A lot of people didn't like it when it actually came to rolling it out. They said, well, it looks like rocks. I wanted flowers. I wanted something pretty in my yard. So a group of horticulturists and concerned people and CSU got together, and they got this thing, and it's got two different titles. I'm sure there's some tiny little difference, but I don't know what it is. Colorado Water-Wise Landscaping or Colorado Scaping. And one of the nice things about this, and Sam mentioned, you can see pictures of the gardens that are actually using these techniques on the Highlands Ranch website. They're beautiful. They've got pockets of purple and over here red, and then you've got yellow, this is blooming, and then you've got the ornamental grasses here, etc. They're absolutely lovely, and what they do is when they're matured, which is usually 3 years, they seldom need any watering at all. No pesticides, no herbicides, no fertilizer. So not are they only saving water, they're also keeping chemicals out of our soil and out of our air. So if you would consider this, I'll tell you more. Highlands Ranch will help you. So some examples. UNC has used some Colorado scaping and has recently saved 1.9 million gallons of water. You know that big white building in downtown Denver that's called the City and County Building that had this lush turf grass in the front? Well, they've been able to renovate that and save 44% of their water usage. And our own Highlands Ranch Metro District, I just have to do a call out for them because they have partnered with Highlands Ranch Water on so many of these water conservation programs. And they announced that by 2030, they will have implemented a number of these new landscaping techniques that will save the equivalent of the usage of 100 families every single year. So that's really great. And then Sarah mentioned a little bit about Highlands at Windcrest. That's where I live. It's a retirement community. And in 2022, we started partnering with Highlands Ranch Water to look at our irrigation system. I had been told by a friend that we were one of the 10 largest water users in Highlands Ranch, and that really got my goat because I knew that didn't have to be. So we worked together, we found a way to save 45% of the irrigation water, which is the equivalent of the annual water usage of 150 families. What that meant in turn for Windcrest is it saved $57,000 a year in water fees, and all of that totaled up to an annual savings for everyone in Highlands Ranch of 15.3 million gallons of water. So we can do it on a big scale, and one of my asks today is that you can consider doing this on a small scale. So that's kind of the water news, and now I'd like to talk more about the details of Highlands Ranch Water. As Sam mentioned, we're 44 years old, or 44 years young, depending on how you look at it. We have a full-time staff of 98, and when I look at an organization and try to figure out how successful they are, I look at financial aspects, but I also look at staff aspects. Because if they have seniority in the people who work there, that means they're doing something right. They're engaged in the work. They like what they do. So of this staff of 98 full-time, 10 of them have greater than 20 years of service. So that's almost half as long as the district has existed. 4 of whom, and this may be out of date because I think one just retired, had greater than 30 years of service. And when you talk to our folks at Highlands Ranch Water District, they're excited, they're proud of what they do. They talk about the residents, they talk about the gardens, they talk about the important services they provide to us. So they're really engaged, and I consider it an honor to work with them. We currently serve 103,000 residents. One of the good things about Highlands Ranch is it does not have the ability to keep growing and growing, whereas there's areas in Aurora and Parker and Castle Rock that are just growing like mad. We don't have to face that. Complete build-out will be 111,300 residents. And we process 6.5, on average, 6.5 million gallons of water a day. And we do that through the 2 plants that Sam outlined for you earlier, the Lake Water Treatment Plant. Many of you have driven by the red brick buildings on Plaza. And that is our water treatment plant. That's the one that takes in the water and removes the impurities and makes the water potable so we can take our showers, cook our dinners. The Marcy Gulch Wastewater Treatment Plant is on Santa Fe, south of County Line Road. That one treats our waste. That treats the water that we give back to the system and removes the contaminants and puts the water back in the South Platte River. And whereas Sam didn't go into all the details, the chemical details of what that water has to do, I love the phrase that we use, it's safe to swim in. Because I think everybody can understand that and identify that. But what happens to the waste? We turn the waste into what we call fertilizer cakes, and those are taken by farmers who use them to fertilize land that is not used for food production. So that's kind of the overview. So let's talk about a very important thing for the Water District, and since I'm treasurer, I think it's very, very important, and that's how do we get our money? And water bills is a significant amount of the money that we get. So thank you for paying your water bills. We really appreciate that. The other way we get money is we can issue bonds. The challenge with issuing bonds is the market has to have an appetite to buy water district bonds, which sometimes isn't dependent just on us. So there has to be a willing market to buy it at a reasonable price. It's very tricky to get that price right, so we've got experts who help us with that. Now, many of the other water districts have a third way to raise money, and that is they can tap into the taxes that you pay. And that is through something called a mill levy. But when we were set up 44 years ago, we didn't get that. I don't know why, but we don't have it. So we really, one of the big balancing acts we have at Highlands Ranch Water District is, we ask you to cut back on your use of water. So what does that do to when you pay us for your water? That goes down also. So one of the challenges we have to do is certainly ask you to stop using as much water, but also control our costs, control our upgrades, control all of our expenses. Recently, we introduced something new, the infrastructure improvement fee. That's a fee that we're going to take the revenue from and put aside for capital improvements. So let's look at what are the key things other than, of course, the mission and vision and the values that Sam shared with you. We have 5 focal points. The first focal point is conservation, but we approach it in a way that is more carrot-oriented than stick-oriented. So what can we do to help you do a better job of saving water? How can you get involved in this? And we have got a whole bunch of ways. These are just a few out there. There's many more on the website. So if you put in a drip irrigation system, we'll help you pay for that. If you replace your turf grass, we'll help you with that. If you buy rain sensors, etc. I don't want to go through all of these, but I want you to know if you're sitting there saying, I really want to reduce my water bill, maybe because of the bill or because of my legacy for my grandkids or my concern about the Colorado water crisis, we're there to help you. And we have an event that we offer several times a year called Sip and Save. And it's always held at a brewery. So, people relax and get more interested in what you're talking about. And then our own Paige McFarland, who knows more about horticulture and water than I could if I lived 10 times, will talk to you about these different incentives, these different rebates that we can provide you. And she also oversees the plans that you come up with to make these. So that's very important to us. The second focal point is our long-term water supply. Sam talked briefly about surface water and groundwater. Surface water is, as it says, surface water, you can see it. So it's a lake, it's a pond, it's a stream. Then there's this other category called groundwater. I think they should have called it underground water because you don't see it, it's underground. And more elegant term is it's an aquifer. So think of them as a big pond under the water, under the ground that Mother Nature has there for our safety and our backup. We're very proud of the fact that our water is 85% from the surface water. So that means when it snows, that's where we get the water from. And very few of it is from the groundwater. And the reason why we're proud of that is the aquifers do not replenish every year. And they do not replenish very much every year. And one of the challenges Colorado and a number of states are facing now is these aquifers are drying up. If they dry up continually, they collapse, they're gone. Bye-bye. So we need to treat our groundwater aquifers as though it's a very special reserve and only tap into it at a very limited amount. So this is a commitment that Highlands Ranch Water has and has been able to achieve for a number of years. The problem is the other water districts haven't planned ahead enough, or their population has increased so dramatically they couldn't keep up with it. But many of the other water districts can have a lot more than 15% or even flip that percent. So what we have done to try to help the aquifers, which of course actually helps us, is we have something called the ASR system, which is aquifer storage and recovery. So on a year when we have some leftover water, we put it back into that aquifer. So we give it a big drink and it says, thank you. So that's, then if we need it later to get at this 15%, ideally, it's sitting there waiting for us. The challenge, though, is because these aquifers are shared by any number of other water districts, is that they can take that water and use it. So it's not a long-term solution to the problem until the other water districts start treating the groundwater, aquifer water, as precious as we do. We do have something else to try to help with the aquifers, and those are called monitoring wells. Monitoring wells are quite close to the aquifer, and what they do is they're kind of like a gas gauge. You know, it says, well, my gas is staying here, gas is dropping, or wow, all of a sudden we've got more, which enables us to plan better. So we actually monitor our aquifers to see what is happening with them. And I think that's a very proactive, positive thing. And number 3, you've heard about PFAS. And I've got to tell you, the great news is that Sam says it easier than I do. Perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl, long time, non-biodegradable, forever chemicals. Think of an umbrella term that's got over 1,000 chemicals under it that you may know, found in Teflon, found in Scotch Guard, those types of products that were designed originally to protect, like in Scotch Guard from stains getting on your lawn furniture or on your sofa. Teflon, keeping your pan, you don't have to use as much butter or margarine or whatever for your pan, so your food doesn't stick. Anyway, those were intended to be good, but in as early as 1949, documents have surfaced where the scientists of 3M told them about the dangers of these PFAS chemicals because they did not break down. They had no idea how to deal with chemicals that there's no end limit on them. And Sam mentioned the EPA has new standards for these. We're very comfortable that we're going to meet those new standards, and the final deadline is in 2031. So we're not worried about that. So the fourth key focal point is how to use the stuff that we've got better and smarter. You know, if you've got unlimited funds, you can just go out and buy new stuff, right? We've all been tempted by that at various sales. But our projects are really big, our equipment's really big, the technology is really intricate. So these cost a lot of money. So what we did in 2023, we put aside $87 million to do an upgrade in our water treatment plant. $87 million. The wastewater treatment plant. The water treatment plant, we started a project on for 2024, and we're hoping that it will be completed in 2028 for $161 million. So this stuff, to say the least, is not cheap. But the attitude of everyone at Highlands Ranch is, how can we do better? How can we make it more efficient? How can we use it better? So even though these are big figures, everything in the plant, almost everything in the plant is 44 years old. So we want to make sure that it stays in top shape so that we can keep the high standards and the high quality of the water and the water services that we provide. And the last goal is one I think you would expect, compliance with rules and regulations. The good news for those of us who live in Colorado, and I am not a regulations person, I don't like that, but Colorado has got really good regulations that's put together by the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, CHPE. Anyway, I missed a word in there. And on the federal level, by the EPA. And we are delighted to tell you that every year we publish an annual report that will tell you to the amount of detail that most of us really don't want to know, that we are meeting all those rules and we are complying with all of those regulations. So that's kind of my part on the Highlands Ranch Water District itself. But I wanted to spend a few minutes talking with you about the board. As Sam mentioned, we have 5 members. These are the ones who are currently the board members. Tammy Esmeyer is our chair, Terry Nolan, vice chair, I'm treasurer, Frank Johns and Julie Fowler, our assistant secretary. In case any of you are interested in applying for board positions, we will have openings in 2 years. Yes, I'm talking to you, David. And the requirement is that you live or own property in Highlands Ranch, that you'll serve a 4-year term, and you'll participate actively in 2 sessions a month. As Sam said, there's 1 session that's a study session, and then every year, the last week, we hold our board meetings, and you are all invited. Earlier this year, on May 6th, we had an election and we filled 2 open positions, but we have staggered terms, so at no time do all 5 members disappear. You wouldn't want that because then you lose your history, your thinking, and the methodology that led you to make various decisions. But one thing you may not know, which I am particularly proud of, Sam mentioned that the original board members up until 2022 were all managers of Shea Homes because they were the developers and they had a very strong vested interest in people moving into Highlands Ranch, right? They're selling real estate. But in 2022, 2 of those openings, 2 of the 5 positions became open, and we had a floodgate of 5 people applying for those 2 positions. And it is publicly elected. However, in 2023, the word got out, and this board was a pretty good place to be. We had 3 openings, 18 candidates for 3 openings. That's when I ran. Was I scared to death? Yes. Okay, so then for 2025, we had 2 openings and 11 candidates. So I'm taking that to mean that Highlands Ranch residents are getting the message. We do have a water crisis. We've got a great Highlands Ranch Water District. Let's figure out how to hold on to this wonderful stuff that we have. So for the 2023 voter turnout increased 79% over 2022, and the 2025 voter turnout was 75% more. So in 2 years, I'm asking each one of you to get out and vote because I want to see those voting numbers go up because we really want to make sure that we're representing you, we're hearing you, we're doing the kind of things that you think are important. So let's look at just a few of those things. We approved multi-million-dollar upgrades. If you add together the upgrades for the wastewater treatment plant and the water treatment plant, that's roughly $248 million. I don't know about you, but I usually don't deal in the hundreds of millions of dollars with my own personal checking account. So there's a lot of good debate, but the staff is so well prepared. They get multiple bids. They know all of the various experts out there. Another thing is we spend a lot of time reviewing finances and investments because the state has a lot of requirements that we must meet in terms of the security of our financial investments, the reporting that we do at regular times. And another thing, I just kind of made up this category. I call it agreed on collaborations because one of the things I was really impressed with the board is we want to work together, whether it's with individual residents, whether it's with other organizations. So here's an example. When 3M announced that they would put aside $103 billion to settle the lawsuit with water districts who were going to have to get that PFAS out of the water and raise a lot of money to do that, we were contacted and we're told that even though we weren't part of the suit originally, we could be part of the claimant pool. So after a discussion about the pros and cons, etc., we voted to go ahead and join this claimant pool. Drum roll please. We have already received $850,000 from this claimant pool. Our lawyer is estimating we will receive, now he's given us a date, but we will receive a minimum of $2 million, and it could be as high as $4 million. So that's one of the ways we try to find more money out there. What can we do to keep our rates reasonable and our excellent quality of water? The other thing I don't know that you know about is the Highlands Ranch Metro District and the Highlands Ranch Water District boards are very close. Sam mentioned even in some cases we share staff, we get together, we share ideas, we think about all of you in this room as our common customer. So we really have a great relationship with the Highlands Ranch Metro District. So I've covered some water news, I've covered details about the water district, about the board. So now we're gonna open it up for questions. Sam had already showed you that we have an e-newsletter. You can subscribe by going to that. We also have a website which has all kinds of information on it that you'll find useful. And again, the board meeting is on the 25th. We'd love to have you. I publish a quarterly newsletter that covers national, state, and local water issues. If you'd like that, contact information is there. But I want to leave you with one thought before we get to the questions, is let's continue to figure out ways to protect Colorado's water and Colorado's legacy.
If you have questions, please raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic.
I'm curious as to whether in your water treatment plant you're picking up much contamination from biphosphate or any other organophosphate.
You know, can Sam and I take questions together with everybody?
Do it together.
Because you don't want to ask me a lot of things about the chemical compounds.
That's an easy one. No, we don't have any contamination from phosphates. I think the question was just, if I got it right, do we have any contamination from phosphates or orthophosphates?
What I asked was, do you have any contamination from glyphosate, Roundup, and the other organophosphate?
So he asked if we have,
Let's just stick with Roundup.
yeah, so specifically, do we see any contamination from Roundup, which I guess has phosphates in it or organophosphates? So yeah, the answer is no. I mean, I don't specifically know what's in Roundup, but we do, test for all the possible contaminants and haven't seen that.
Just wondering, because everybody in the world, the homeless desktop, and it's just shells and shells and shells of Roundup, and that seems to be
Yeah, so yeah, he said at Home Depot there's shelves and shelves of chemicals like Roundup that you can put on your lawn and in your yard. And so we have tried to work with the local hardware stores, Ace and Home Depot, to sell, to try to encourage them to sell phosphate-free fertilizers. And that's one place that we've had some success. The Highlands Ranch Metro District, which as Shay mentioned, we cooperate with a lot, moved to a fertilizer, I think it was 2 years ago, that is phosphate-free. And so I think we've made some progress there. With that, the stuff that people put on their lawns doesn't necessarily make it back into our system, but obviously it gets into the groundwater, into the stormwater, and back into the river. So yeah, if we can minimize chemical use, that's good for all of us. We have a source water protection program that kind of focuses on those kinds of things.
How does Wyoming enter into the equation as far as one of the 7 states? It's like they're a little bit north of where it might be.
Yeah.
And then also the second question is, what are all these years of these negotiations to come up with a plan for this settlement? What are the top 2 reasons of why there just seems to be no progress with the settlement?
Well, okay. First of all, I don't sit at the negotiations table, so I can't tell you all of the details, but it's based on Colorado river water usage. I don't know what percentage of the river water Wyoming uses, but they use enough to be one of the 7 states. Second of all, everything I've heard about the negotiators is they are really good people. They're very well intended. They're knowledgeable about water things, but they represent their own state. So take, for example, California. California looks at all the 7 states and says, we got more people than you do, so we should have more water. You look at a state with a lower population and they say, no, we were here first. So it's just not these perspective of their state. And last year, they told the Bureau of Reclamation that they had come up with a new Colorado River Compact. The problem was only 6 states agreed with it, and California did not. And the Bureau of Reclamation said, no. The instruction was all 6 of you have to decide, so go back to the table, and they haven't been able to make significant progress.
What percentage of the irrigation water is used by the Metro District? Or do they use non-potable water?
Yeah, so the question was what percentage of our irrigation water is used by the Metro District? So SJ mentioned that Windcrest used to be one of the top 10 water users. They're not, but the Metro District is our largest single water user, but they in fact only use 6% of our total water.
6%?
6%. Yeah. So it's a relatively small amount, even though they're the biggest single user. And that's because about 75% of our water goes to single family homes. So, you know, it's just onesies and twosies, you and me and everybody else in the room using a little bit of water. The Metro District uses a lot, but it's a relatively small percentage. Other irrigators, so we have commercial irrigators, so think of Douglas County schools or any of the stores that have irrigated landscapes. Those all together, all those commercial irrigation accounts is what we call that, up to another 12%. So it's close to 20% goes strictly to irrigation for commercial customers. And then the remaining 8 or 10% is businesses. So we call those just commercial indoor accounts, but businesses use.
Well, it seems like they could do a lot more. Windcrest saved enough for 150 families in the Metro District. Only 100 by 2030.
Yeah.
They got a long way to go.
Yeah, they got a long way to go, but they're working hard on it. They have something like, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, I know there's somebody here who can correct me, but something like 450 acres that they irrigate throughout Highlands Ranch. And they've identified something like 230 acres that they can eventually transform into low water landscapes. They've done somewhere between 5 and 10 so far, so they just started the program, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they've just started the program within the past couple of years. And it's expensive to do, and it takes a little time to make sure, because people don't want to drive by a big stretch of grass that's now just dirt and weeds in their mind, as it takes some time to for the new plant life to grow. As Jay mentioned, it takes 3 years sometimes. And so it's a long process. I think it's somewhere on the order of $50,000 to convert 1 acre. And so if you do that math, it's a lot of money. It takes time. So they're working hard. They're committed to cutting their water use. And I would say, you may remember in 2022, as Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was, that we had drought restrictions, the first time we've ever had to put those in place. The Highlands Ranch Metro District is an outstanding partner with that. They immediately volunteered to cut their water use by 20% and really help the community out that way. So we work closely with them and work well.
Are there any whole house water filtration systems with the company and better quality filters that we can install in our own house that will take out most, or capture most of the forever chemicals?
Yes,
Is there something we can do?
The question was, are there whole house filters that you can install to take out all of the forever chemicals? There definitely are. So what we use primarily to pull the forever chemicals or the PFAS out are carbon-based compounds. So it's just what you would find in a Brita water filter, but on a much larger scale. And so you can put some kind of filtration that's based on carbon, which will pull that last little bit of the remaining PFAS chemicals out. You can also do it's more expensive and it wastes more water. So your water bill will be a little bit higher if you use the same amount, because a lot of it's going to waste. But there's reverse osmosis systems that you can install. They're more expensive to install. They use more water and they use more electricity. I don't really know of any brand names or companies to recommend, but there are definitely some options out there. I will say that I truly drink. I usually have my water bottle here, like SJ did, as a prop. But I just drink unfiltered Highlands Ranch water every day, and I trust that it's safe to drink.
So with the Colorado water crisis clearly happening, global warming is of course forecast to get much worse, and global warming is responsible for our droughts. So the droughts will be becoming worse. How come we aren't getting more restrictions on our lawn watering, or how come we're not promoting more water saving devices like dual flush toilets?
I'll take that one. So with, as SJ talked about, the water crisis and climate change and other threats to our water supply, why isn't Highlands Ranch Water doing more? The answer is we don't want to push our customers, too hard or push them away. We want to incentivize people. SJ's slide said that it was a carrot versus a stick. We do have the authority to go out and issue violations and fines to people who are violating our regulations. For instance, you can't water between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. When we see people doing that, we tell them and try to inform them about the rules and regs and tell them that there could be fines and violations. But we have chosen not to use that stick. We use the carrot more. So that really is why we have all these conservation programs. In the past 5 years, we've budgeted $400,000 roughly towards conservation incentives. And really, that's the way we've been trying to do it. The one time in 2022 that I mentioned that we had to put drought restrictions in place, we do have those tools. We've now tested them and they work well. We cut water use throughout the community by at least 15% in 2022. So we know that people can save more water than we're sort of pushing them to do. But we want to bring everybody along with us. And as far back as 2002, there was a drought that really kind of stressed our system, and we put water budgets in place then. So now on your bill, you might see what your water budget is X thousand gallons for the next 2 months. That's personalized to everybody's lot size throughout the community. When we put those water budgets in place starting in 2003, we did see water use drop by about 20% as well. So we've pushed conservation. We don't want to be too draconian about it. We like to bring people along at events like this and kind of explain why it's important. And I really think that if we get more people's attention, then we'll start to see more water conservation and more success with those programs.
When you extract the PFAS from the water as you're processing it, what do you do with it then?
Yeah, so good question. The question is, once we extract the PFAS or those forever chemicals from the water, what happens to it? What happens is there's the word absorb, which we always think of as sponges, but the word we use for the carbon chemicals that we use is adsorb with a D instead. So that's a chemical process where the PFAS compounds are actually locked into that carbon and become inert and inactive in the environment. And so what happens is the carbon adsorbs those chemicals. We filter those particles out and we send them to our wastewater treatment plant where they go through that treatment process, and then they end up as part of the fertilizer cake or the biosolids that SJ talked about. So they're chemically inert, they're locked into that biosolid or fertilizer material, and then they're land applied on farms, as SJ said, that aren't used as crops. So those are effectively taken out of the environment. There's another way that you can do it that's very expensive, that we haven't employed this technology yet, but there's a different form of carbon that can absorb to the PFAS chemicals, and you can put it in a furnace at something like 500 degrees Celsius and burn it, and that actually destroys the chemicals. So some water utilities are moving towards that process, but we haven't seen a furnace like that built in Colorado yet. The closest ones are in Oklahoma and Texas.
Just wanted to know, what is the incentive? You talked about the aquifer and how precious that is down in the ground. What is the incentive for the other treatment plants that are water districts to not just keep taking and use what they, use whatever? What kind of incentive do they have?
The question is for other water districts that rely more heavily on groundwater or the aquifers. What incentives or rules, regulations, anything that will kind of force them to limit how much they use? The easiest answer on that is when Colorado started allowing water utilities to tap into those aquifers in the ground. This was, I think, in 1979. what they said is they did a survey, the U.S. Geological Survey, and the Colorado version of that, the Colorado GS, did surveys to try to figure out how much water, to estimate how much water was beneath each district or each city throughout the whole state. And what they said is you can use that much water, but you can only use 1% of it a year. And so they wanted it to last for 100 years. And so that was the initial thinking, was that if you only use 1% of it a year, it lasts for 100 years. And in those intervening years, you can find alternatives to use. So they didn't say that you can't use all the water until it's gone, but they said that you have to pace yourself so that you can find other alternatives. So what communities are doing is just finding ways to get surface water, but it's harder and harder to find. We talk about surface water in a unit called acre feet. It's just 1 acre, like think of a football field that's filled with 1 foot of water. So we call that acre feet. Surface water rates in Colorado now sell for at least $40,000 for 1 acre foot. And you'd have to do the math, there's a lot of zeros, but we use about 15,000 acre feet every year. So if you multiply that by 40,000, it's somewhere in the hundreds of millions. That's how much our water is worth. And so when other communities who developed our groundwater are going to find alternative sources, they're very expensive. So Parker and Castle Rock, as one example, are trying to develop some water way out by Fort Oregon on the South Platte River. They're going to build a big reservoir there. They can use that water when it's an especially wet year, but they have to pump it on. I think it's 130 miles back to Parker. They may have to spend over $1 billion on that project before it's done. And so that's what they're doing. So they have the right under Colorado law to use the water, but it's only supposed to last 100 years, and they're supposed to find alternatives in the meantime.
I'm just glad to hear how locally here in Highlands Ranch we are working on these issues. But to me, this is a much broader issue for the state of Colorado, for the western United States, and so on. Water, that problems with having enough water. Are you guys working with much broader, wider communities, or is it just here in Highlands Ranch?
Yeah. So the question is, thank you. He said that he thinks we're doing good things in Highlands Ranch to try to conserve water, but he wonders how we're working with other entities, other water providers across the country and across the western United States. We try to be as involved as we can. We work closely with entities like Denver Water and Aurora Water. A lot of the smaller water providers are part of an organization called the South Metro Water Supply Authority. So places like Parker and Castle Rock and Sterling Ranch, and I'm trying to think of other big ones. There's some smaller districts, but there's 11 members in that group, and we meet monthly to try to discuss best practices. I'm heading up tomorrow to there's an organization that's statewide called the Colorado Water Congress, and I'm actually doing a presentation tomorrow afternoon on our conservation program. So we try to stay involved and learn the best practices, and hopefully other people pick those up, and we pick up a lot of things from them as well.
I identified 3 more questions, so those are done. There's 2 more then. 2 more questions.
And I apologize because I have 2 questions. They're still related. The first one is, do you have crews that go around and individually test residential lawns for oversaturation or potential oversaturation? And 2, are we allowed as residents to collect rainwater for watering our plants?
Okay, so the first question is, do we go around and check yards for oversaturation? I think you mean so that if people are overwatering, we can somehow try to convince them not to. The signal that we send is through a high water bill for that. So if people are watering their lawn to the point that it's saturated and running down the gutters, we hope that they see that in their water bill. Another thing that we're doing is we're slowly, I can explain why it's taking so long, but we're slowly converting our entire community to what we call AMI, which is sort of like smart water meters, so that you can have an app on your phone that tells you, that you can set it up so that it tells you if you have a leak in your system, and then you can investigate and figure out what that is. And we've installed somewhere on the order of 10,000 of those so far. Only about 30% of people who have those meters that actually signed up for the app, and so we always try to encourage people to do that. But you should see with that, or if you know how to use your water meter, or instructions are on our website, you can go down and it'll tell you if there's a leak registering in the system. So we hope through the high water bills and through people just kind of paying attention to how much water is going through their system that we can catch that. And the second question. Oh, can you collect rainwater? Yeah, so for a long time in Colorado that was illegal because somebody owns every drop of water in the state, it seems like. But the legislature a few years ago passed a law that each residential property can have 2 55-gallon barrels that collect rainwater. And you don't have to have anybody's permission for that. You can just go buy the barrels and set it up yourself. Yeah, you're welcome.
After spending $300 on my last water bill to try to resurrect my lawn, which is now straw, I'm heavily considering xeriscaping. Is there still restrictions on having xeriscaping in your front yard in Highlands Ranch? Because I was told at one time you can only do your backyard, you can't do your front yard. I think those restrictions should be lifted in time because I think our water situation is dire.
Yeah, so the question, the gentleman said that his lawn, he's been spending $300 on his last water bill to try to keep it green and it's still not working. So he's interested in Colorado Scape or Xeriscape. And he asked if it's permissible in Highlands Ranch to do Xeriscape in your front yard. The answer is yes. So it didn't used to be, but the Highlands Ranch Community Association, HRCA, changed their rules. They're another entity that we work very closely with. I actually just met with their general manager this morning to talk through things, but they do a lot of that now. So if you're going to convert any, I think it's front yard or backyard, you have to go to them and get, and just kind of give them your plan and they'll approve that and come to us, give us your plan, and then we'll approve giving you the money, which is $2.50 per square foot up to 2,000 square feet is really what we do. Was there one more question?
No, I think we're going to stop there. So
we're stopping there.
More questions, they can come up and talk to you afterward. We have 3 giveaways tonight.